Good evening and welcome to City of Pasco Council Workshop Meeting. The council thanks you for being part of your city government. At workshop meetings, the council discusses issues, but no formal action is taken. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. This meeting is being televised live on PSC TV channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and is streamed live on City's Facebook page, website, YouTube channel, and GoToWebinar. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. Lastly, the public may submit their comment and or questions by contacting the city manager, city clerk, or by using the Ask Pasco app. And with that, can I get roll call, please?
Council members Blaisdell,
Present.
Campos,
Present.
Milne,
Present.
Roach,
Present.
Serrano,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Present.
and Mayor Barajas.
Present. Would you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Next, we'll go on to item number 4, verbal reports from council members. Any council members attending any meetings, events, or anything they wish to mention? Councilman Serrano.
Yeah, several of us attended the city's Veterans Day memorial event out at City View Cemetery. As always, it was a wonderful event. We had a lot of folks that showed up, both from staff, several council members, as well as a lot of veterans. We had the opportunity to thank them for their service. And the Blackout Memorial truck was there. I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't know the story of it, but there's a local couple who got a large black semi that says, you know, it's got different slogans like freedom wasn't free, a lot of different things to remember those who have served and who have passed and those who have sacrificed. And so to know that that truck is here housed locally in our community and then it travels, they said that they owned it for 6 months and it hadn't even seen Pasco. It'd been to New York for the 9/11, and then apparently there was another 9/11 event in Colorado. And where they go, they locally, as a 501c3, raise money that they're able to drop into the local VFW or other programs. I think it's an extremely laudable organization, and the marshals. So thank you for that. And again, just thank you. We had Jerry Peltier, who was a mayor in West Richland for some time, as well as a Vietnam vet, and several other vets. I see Mr. Vargas is here. And obviously Mr. Harpster is, but he wasn't present. So thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you, City, for the wonderful event.
Thank you for that. Mayor, actually we have Councilman Milne first, and then I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This last Thursday, I did attend the Pasco Parks and Recreation Advisory Board with Director Rice. Thought it was a good meeting. Some of the main quick points were Pasco did receive a $100,000 park grant. They are working on the footing for the all-weather dome to be completed sometime in the spring, I believe, if my notes were correct. Around there. And then, of course, we got the Winterfest coming up here in a couple weeks, and also the Lamps and Cable Ridge Run, which is December 16th.
Thank you for sharing. Mayor Pro Tem, okay, we're skipping Mayor Pro Tem Brown, but I do want to make a brief mention, just to add to Councilman Serrano's Memorial Day. It was beautiful. And I do want to mention that we do have some more veterans. Chief Roski, I know you served as well. Did not serve. I'm mistaken. Either way, we thank everyone that did serve, that has served, and active as well. Councilman Milne, I know your 2 daughters are currently active. My son is also in the Army. And so it was a beautiful ceremony to commemorate everyone that has served the country. So thank you for that. With no further comments, we'll move on to item number 5, items for discussion. Presentation of 2024 legislative priorities. City Manager Lincoln.
Mayor and Council, as you're aware, this is the time of year that we take a look at the legislative agenda, the draft that'll be presented this evening. It's the vehicle that the council uses and that our lobbying team uses for going into the next legislative session. What are the priorities for the city council as far as the typically there's funding opportunities that are listed in there, and then there's policy areas that are prioritized by city council. So this evening we have Brianna, who's your lobbyist with Gordon Thomas Honeywell. She has been the city's lobbyist for some time now and is very successful at it. We very much enjoy having her and Holly on our team, and look forward to their presentations every year. I'll note that she's also stepping in while she's on vacation to do this tonight. So very appreciative of her and her team for all they've done to get us to this point. So, Brianna.
Wonderful. Thank you, City Manager, and good evening, Council. As was mentioned, I'm Brianna Murray with Gordon Thomas Honeywell Government Relations. I serve as your advocate and lobbyist before the Washington State Legislature. I am usually joined by my colleague, Holly Sanabria. You may recall her as being Holly Kochi. She did just recently get married and went through a name change. She was unable to join this evening, so unfortunately you just get me. I do have a PowerPoint this evening to walk through your draft legislative agenda and support opposed document and put it into some context. Is that available for you all to put on your end, or do I need to do it on mine?
We'll advance the slide for you.
Next slide. So the overview for tonight's presentation is I want to review with you some of our accomplishments from earlier this year with the 2023 legislative session, talk about how those accomplishments dovetail into what to expect during the 2024 legislative session, and then review a draft 2024 legislative agenda for your all's consideration, and then discuss next steps to make sure we are well prepared for the 2024 session. Next slide. So the 2023 legislative session was the first year of the 2-year legislative biennium. It was a long legislative session, and it was also a budget year, which is when the legislature develops their biennial operating capital and transportation budgets. You all, as the City Council, developed a very ambitious 2023 legislative agenda, and Holly and I worked hard to rise to that occasion. And I believe we had the most successful legislative session in years in 2023. These are just the funding successes that we were able to accomplish. So $5 million for the Pasco Processed Water Reuse Facility, $155,000 for Downtown Plaza, $3 million for Gesa Stadium, $750,000 for the soccer fields. I'll note that the average appropriation going to a community is usually $800,000, and usually a community gets one appropriation. So the fact that the city was so successful in securing all of this funding in 2023 is really unprecedented. I implore you not to expect this every single year, but I do want to highlight how successful we were. And I think it's that success that leads into what we're recommending for the 2024 session. So if you want to advance to the next slide. So the 2024 session is the second year of the 2-year legislative biennium. It is a short legislative session that will be scheduled to last 60 days, and it is a non-budget year. So the legislature will be going in mid-biennium and making adjustments to the operating capital and transportation budgets that they adopted earlier this year in the form of adopting supplemental budgets. And they will consider and adopt policy bills. All bills that were introduced during the 2023 session that did not pass into law automatically carry over and remain under consideration in 2024. And then legislators are also able to introduce new bills. Traditionally, we do not see controversial bills advance during the short legislative session because following the 2024 session or the November 2024 elections, where all members of the House of Representatives and approximately half the members of the Senate are up for re-election, we're beginning to see legislators make announcements for different positions. They're announcing that they're not running, various retirements. And so we are expecting that the November 2024 elections will bring about a shift in people bases, if not a shift in politics. In recent election cycles, we've seen about a 30% turnover in the legislature, not necessarily a political shift. So not necessarily, you know, D's being replaced with R's or R's being replaced with D's, but a lot of individuals choosing to not run for reelection and new people coming in. So I'd encourage you to have this context in mind when we think about the 2024 legislative agenda. I want you to think about the fact that we've just had all this success and that we're now entering a year where it really is a non-budget year, a supplemental year, and that it is the short 60-day session followed by what I'm anticipating to be a robust campaign season. Next slide. Your legislative agenda has historically been divided into two different sections. I highly recommend this format of dividing your legislative agenda into two different sections. The first section is your top priority issues. These are the issues that Holly and I spend the bulk of our time on. These are the items that we encourage your engagement on the most as you meet with legislators, as you make trips over to Olympia. And they're really how we evaluate whether or not a session was a success or not. All of the items on the previous slide on our 2023 successes were listed as top priorities on your previous legislative agenda. This is in contrast to the support opposed list, which is a much longer list of all the different issues that come forward before the legislature and how the city might want to engage in them. If you move to the next slide. These are so in your materials, you have a draft 2024 legislative priorities. And these are the highlights of the items on that document. I encourage you to look at that document directly in your packets now if you have it before you. The first item as one of the top priorities is a capital budget request for $4 million for an investment in regional emergency communication. This is the only funding request that is on the legislative priorities, and it is in coordination with the other stakeholders in the region. The other tri-cities, the counties are all putting this item on their respective legislative agendas. The reason this is the only funding request on your legislative priorities is because we just came off of having so much success in the 2023 session. We want to honor that success, give others an opportunity to secure funding, and I do view there as being far more limited funding opportunities in the short 60-day session. So the only funding request on the legislative priorities is this $4 million regional request. The next legislative priority outlined on the agenda is public safety and behavioral health. You all had a similar statement on your agenda last legislative session, and there is work that remains undone in this policy space. We've modified the statement in the legislative agenda to reflect some of the actions that the legislature took last session. You'll notice that there's a request for the legislature revisiting vehicular pursuits, ongoing investments in the Three Rivers behavioral health system, alternative response teams, and investments to address the opioid epidemic. The next item on the legislative priorities is transportation. This is a long-standing item that we have carried over from year to year. You'll recall that the last transportation revenue package that the legislature adopted was in 2022. And unfortunately, it did not make any investments in the Tri-Cities region, nor in the city of Pasco, despite legislators having come to Pasco, toured projects, and acknowledged the benefits of those projects to the community. Since 2022, we've continued to beat the drum on the need for transportation investments in the Pasco community, and this legislative priority statement and the projects listed therein are really continuing that effort. I do not expect a lot of investments in transportation this upcoming session, but I think it would be a missed opportunity to not continue to highlight the need and beat the drum for the need for investments in Pasco. The next item is an item that was previously on your support opposed list that we're modifying and elevating to being a legislative priority. It's really a statement calling on the legislature to find a solution to increase the number of water rights available to municipalities, and specifically the city of Pasco. We include a few different ideas in the statement on the legislative agenda on how the legislature might increase municipal water rights, but this direction is really calling on Holly and I to engage in the broader legislative discussion on municipal water rights that we anticipate will happen this year and in several years into the future. This is likely a multi-year legislative priority. And the final item on your legislative priorities is around housing. I think as you are all likely aware, the legislature called 2023 the year of housing, and they adopted over a dozen different bills related to housing, many of which was preempted city land use authority. The city of Pasco engaged heavily in that discussion and provided really valuable input in that policy dialogue. And this direction on your legislative priorities is to continue that engagement. Next slide. So in addition to your legislative priorities, as I mentioned, we also have the second document, which is a support opposed list. This is a direction that's being provided to myself, Holly, and others on city staff on issues that are of interest, but don't rise to the level of being a top priority. We do engage legislators on these topics, but we tend to do so at a lesser level and based on what committees they're serving on, rather than engaging all of the delegation across the board. You all receive from us a weekly report during the legislative session, and many of these topics are included in that report. This is also a place to identify long-term objectives or other broader policy statements that you would like to see us explore in future years. The list that is in your draft document was taken from the 2023 agenda, and it was refined, reformatted, and revisioned slightly. It does look very similar to your previous year documents. I will note that some of these statements are broad statements, and within those broad statements, there's an inherent gray area that we navigate. We use those broad statements as direction, but coordinate closely with the city manager and pull on our years of experience representing the Pasco community to take a position that best meets the city of Pasco. I want to highlight just a couple items on that document that are new or different. The first is there is an added statement related to insurance costs. In recent years, we have seen the legislature increase liability for local governments and cities specifically that has led to an increase in insurance liability rates. So we've added a section that highlights that additional costs and calls on the legislature to not advance any of those proposals. Another item is around extended producer responsibility, which is a way of making producers of goods responsible for the packaging that those goods come in and for the recycling of that packaging. This is an item that the Association of Washington Cities has been very engaged in and just recently circulated a letter of support amongst cities asking for cities to sign on. We have an added statement on carbon reduction. The legislature has been very invested in advancing policies and funding to reduce the carbon in our climate. This is a statement saying that the city would support any of that funding coming directly to the city of Pasco. And those are the primary items that are new or different that I wanted to highlight for you all. Some of the other items were removed or modified based on action that was taken by the legislature this last session or updated, but otherwise remain generally the same. Next slide. So next steps is for you all to consider the draft documents, both the top priorities and the support opposed document in your packet tonight. Provide us with any feedback and move toward approval of those documents in a timely fashion. We will then engage in one-on-one meetings with the 8th and 15th district legislators between now and the beginning of session, and will be participating in legislative committee days, which are held in Olympia, November 30th through December 5th, which will then leave us well prepared for the beginning of the legislative session on January 8th. I'll just note the legislative session ends on March 7th, making it one of the earliest ending legislative sessions we've had in recent history. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions and look forward to hearing your feedback on the draft documents in your packet.
Ms. Marie, thank you so much for your presentation. We do have some questions from Councilman Campos.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Murray, for your presentation. I'm looking over everything. I like the way things are laid out. My one question is, when we talked about implementing the Blake fix here a little bit ago, the big issue came up about local control, and I see that that's listed on our, our opposition. Pasco opposes any proposals that restrict, mandate, or otherwise interfere with the city's ability. But then in our actual top priority, we talk about public safety and recruiting and retaining law enforcement officers, and allowing officers to engage in vehicular pursuits. But I seem to recall our conversation after we implemented the Blake fixes that we still want to go back to the table and do more. I don't think that we were, as a city, completely happy with what was presented forward. I know that recently I've seen an update from Pasco PD. They've got a little bit more teeth in their bite now, and things seem to be moving in the right direction. But we want to, I think, continue to strive towards something that continues to implement progress and moves our city in a direction where we can, have our police officers being able to do everything they should be able to do. So just wanted to put those out. I'm pretty sure we had a very lengthy conversation on that, and I want to make sure that it's not forgotten.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Councilmember, we can certainly add a bullet speaking specifically to the Blake decision, supportive of any technical fixes and increased funding for successful implementation. One of the reasons it's not included on the list is because we are not anticipating a very robust discussion on possession of controlled substances during the 2024 session. The feedback that we have gotten directly from legislators is that that was an item that was discussed and addressed in the 2023 session, and there is not a political will within the majority party to bring the issue up again in 2024, particularly immediately prior to election season. With that being said, simply because that we've gotten that political feedback doesn't mean that we cannot highlight it as a need. So we can certainly add that bullet, but I want to add that bullet while also highlighting reasonable expectations on what's likely to occur this session.
Absolutely. Thank you for communicating that. It was just, I kind of made the assumption that that was likely to happen based on your explanation of the short session. And just, if we have an opportunity to discuss it, I think as a city, I think that we expressed that's important for us. And more so, I appreciate your explanation on the process. I kind of understand now that you guys would more than likely fit it in if applicable, but it's not likely that they would have that conversation, which makes sense based on it was 0 dark 30 when they even decided to come back to the table and talk about having a Blake fix. So that's all. I just, like I said, wanted to kind of air that out there and see if it sticks.
Thank you, Councilmember Campos. Councilwoman Roach?
It's fine.
Councilwoman Roach.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Brianna, for your presentation. Always enjoy it, and I think I ask this question almost every year. So as we look at the legislative priorities on that first page, are these priorities listed in a ranked order? Are they just all our priorities for the city of equal value?
Yes, Councilmember, and you do ask that every year. I should have highlighted it in anticipation. They are not in any sort of ranked order. Each of the top priority items listed on that single page will get equal attention across the board from Holly and I and our advocacy. And in many ways, they're presented in a way that I think is most visually and compelling to a legislative audience. So for example, highlighting the capital funding requests with our regional partners first and foremost is something that I think is a great conversation starter. It really facilitates diving into the other legislative priorities. So in many ways, it's laid out as a successful advocacy tool, but not in a prioritization.
Well, thank you for answering that. And I would like to just simply say that, Brianna, our conversations, especially over the last couple of years, have predominantly been about lack of housing, diversity of housing. And so I think that's something probably statewide, but just want to make sure that that is something that's prioritized in this upcoming session because it has occupied a lot of the conversation in this election season locally. And I plan to, even though I will not be on council any longer and won't be lobbying this coming year unless you call on me specifically, but we'll be holding accountable our future electeds to make good on that campaign statement that they've all made. Which brings me to my next question for you, and it might be a staff question actually for Public Works. I'm not sure who the right person is for this. As I look at the carbon reduction support, so supporting this funding to come back to the city, this was a conversation that we had, I believe, around processed water reuse facility and the possibility of getting either federal grant dollars back, but are there state funds already set aside for industrial wastewater for the processed water reuse facility that we could tap into on this item?
Go ahead, Brianna.
Yeah, so I would just highlight that the $5 million we received for the processed water reuse facility during the 2023 session was revenue coming from the Climate Commitment Act. And so the direction there in your support opposed statement is to look for more opportunities like that. There are many different grant programs that are in the process of being set up that the processed water reuse facility could potentially apply for, but there's also many other city projects that the city could apply for. One of the things we would be advocating with this statement in coordination with other communities is a desire for some funding to be allocated directly to the city to reduce the staff time needed to apply to the various grants in order to pull those dollars into the community.
Thank you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, sounds like you covered it. And the last thing that I just wanted to touch on, Brianna, that I think is kind of a nuanced position within the support and oppose is while I think that the overwhelming majority of people in our region do oppose removal of the lower Snake River dams, I think that there is most definitely room, and I say this to you because you're going to be there advocating on our behalf for infrastructure funding, because we do like our low-cost renewable energy, but we also know that those dams are failing. And so they are going to need that repair infrastructure. And so whatever, hopefully, policies come out of this short session are also coming out in favor of repairing these. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilwoman Roach. Councilman Serrano.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Brianna. As always, great to see you. Great to hear you. You mentioned that we received a lot of money. We do have, I think, if I had it right, about $14.5 million that we're addressing in transportation. I realize the transportation budget cycle. Is that too much of an ask, or is it you don't ask, you don't get? Might as well ask for everything.
Yeah, I will say, so I've been divided on how to present your transportation priorities. Because, right, I started off by saying it's a short 60-day session, there's not many funding opportunities. We want to, and we had this huge success in 2023. So let's limit the number of funding requests on the 2024 agenda. And then, of course, there's this nice lengthy list of transportation requests. I think, at least for the 2024 session, I think it is important that we continue to include that list of projects to keep them front and center so that the need is well known and it's one of our primary talking points. Um, I just don't think we can let go of the fact that the 2022 package made no investments in the Tri-City region yet. My anticipation is that there will not be a transportation revenue package or new projects funded in 2024, but there will probably be a robust discussion around that in 2025. And my advice to the city is to not put our foot up off the gas on sending that message, even though we know there's no way of bringing home success on that item in 2024. And to continue to keep that pedal down, keep sending that message so that when it is ripe for funding, when there is a funding opportunity, we're really well positioned. And they're almost like so tired of hearing from us that they're like, geez, give Pasco some money.
No, that's totally fine, and I'll take the dude get Pasco some money any day. One last comment, and this kind of addresses. I want to address chiefs on this. It's the final point on the public safety. It's about increasing access to opioid reversal medications such as Narcan. One of the hot topics in talking with friends in the legal and policing industry in California is the new civil rights wave is individuals who overdose, then their families sue the cities or municipalities for lack of training or inadequate implementation of Narcan. We all know this. Various issues predominate in one state up and down the West Coast, and then they come back. I would likely anticipate that we'll see those types of lawsuits coming to the state of Washington if they're not already here. So the question that I have for the two of you, and then it opens up the question whether or not this needs to stay on this list, is are we adequately trained? Are we, by increasing accessibility to these medications, are we risking placing the city in just giving us a higher level of risk rather than benefit to our public? And I obviously understand I'm not asking a legal opinion here, I would ask Mr. Ferguson, but to the extent that we are prepared to receive these, are we prepared to receive these and implement them properly, or where are we?
Sure, great question. So as far as our staff, so for law enforcement and firefighters, we are properly trained. We have, and the Narcan that we administer is a little bit different than what we get from whether it's the health district or the state. And so the Narcan we use is mostly we draw it up and administer it through a certain route. What we get from the health district is usually a single dose, and it's through administered nasally. And it's a very simple process, but there's instructions on it. And so that's what we get from the state.
Okay.
But we don't provide training to the public with that. We just give that out through grants that we get that medication from.
Okay. And our officers, when they administer them, do you believe they're in a safe place? As far as the recipients, are they combative? Are they responsive?
Well, we haven't had any, and we've had a lot of Narcan saves, many real life saves. I'm not aware of anybody coming out of one combative, at least in our jurisdiction. We haven't had that. As the chief said, our staff is appropriately trained. What litigation is going to look like, I don't know, but we'll continue to have it deployed in the field, rapidly ready to provide to those that we think are overdosing.
Okay. I appreciate that, and I didn't want to crystal ball or put you on the level for that. But again, just understanding how it's actually deployed in the streets here, the effectiveness, and again, we have to assess the risk to our jurisdiction. So it sounds like there's no problem with leaving this on there. Again, had I heard other stories, it might be worth a conversation. So I appreciate that information. That's it for me. Thanks, Brianna.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Brianna, thank you so much. I do appreciate the list. Appreciate the public safety especially. I mean, we are working on a plan for retention. I've had discussions with Chief on possibilities. I know the AWC has adopted or added to their priorities a discussion that I had in regards to a conversation regarding eligibility. I know it doesn't pertain to the city. I have not talked to our attorneys, but I will let the AWC take the lead on that. But it's something that I do hope to continue supporting as far as public safety. Transportation is definitely a top priority, as well as housing. Thank you for clarifying that the list does not specifically mean how it's going to be discussed, but housing and transportation have been points of conversation for many, and so the continued discussion and push for it is definitely something in all of our minds. So appreciate that being on the list again. Thank you again, Ms. Murray. We don't have anything else. No other questions.
Okay.
So appreciate it.
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to participate remotely and look forward to working with you all throughout the 2024 session. As City Manager Lincoln, would you outline next steps for legislative agenda approval?
Your agenda for next
I can
week.
add the bullet and then, go ahead.
Oh, we'll put it on the agenda for next week. You and I can coordinate the small amendments that were suggested.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. Thank you for that, Mr. Lincoln. And with that, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. Resolutions, change orders number 22 through 27 for the Lewis Street Overpass and PSA amendments with JUB Engineers Incorporated and WSP USA Incorporated, respectively, for construction support and construction management. Director Worley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Tonight, we are going to have a presentation by Michael Ullman, our project manager from HLA, to discuss the additional change orders on the Lewis Street Overpass project. Before Michael begins, I just want to mention that this is a project that has had its issues associated with it. Sometimes we run into projects like this where we run into things in the ground that we didn't anticipate, which adds cost to the project. Sometimes a project this large runs into issues that we don't anticipate. And so we are working our way through these. And Michael's going to share with you the ones that we are discussing for approval for next week. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Michael.
Mayor and Council, as Mr. Worley said, here to talk about some change orders for Lewis Street Overpass. So since there's at least one new face here, just want to give you guys a brief background of the Lewis Street Overpass project. It's a large and complicated project in a really old area of Pasco. The major elements of the project include a 625-foot bridge. There's over a mile of bridge girders on it, over 900,000 pounds of rebar. There's a secondary 70-foot bridge, which in and of itself is actually a relatively large bridge over First Avenue. We've got about 55,000 square feet of walls, about 40,000 cubic yards of wall backfill, about 35,000 cubic yards of common borrow, 4,000 tons of asphalt, and about 6,500 square yards of sidewalk. So it's a big project, as you're all keenly aware. Here's a few pictures that we took from just last week. The picture on the left side, those are the structural earth walls. We'll be discussing those a little bit later in one of the change orders. The one in the middle shows the BNSF structure and also a staircase that is also SEW walls, structural earth walls. And the third picture is the additional structural earth walls and the First Avenue Bridge. So as we start, just want to talk about schedule very briefly. The groundbreaking ceremony was back on June 4th, 2021. The contractor actually began work on August 30th of 2021 due to procurement of materials and things like that. There was a small delay in the start of the project. With that, it's a 400 working day contract. The plan right now is for the bridge to be open to vehicles in approximately March of this next year. With that, there'll be a short closure of Lewis Street before traffic's eventually moved onto the bridge. We anticipate substantial completion on the project, which is not physical completion, but things are operational for use around July of next year. And then the underpass demolition is actually planned for the first quarter of 2025. And that aligns with some requirements from BNSF. There's periods of the year where they won't allow you to do work that impacts their tracks, so that'll push out a little bit further than the rest of the project. So change orders 22 through 27. The first change order 22, is related to BNSF security fencing. It's an item that's required to meet BNSF safety concerns. Basically, they want to make sure that people aren't encouraged to walk out on the tracks and things like that. That work is completed with our contractor on just a time and material basis, and that's typically driven by requests from BNSF. The total proposed change order for that is $20,000. And again, that's on a time and material basis, so if it's not needed, that money won't be spent. However, we anticipate $20,000 will be needed for that. Change order 23 is for BNSF bridge signs. These are just signs with standard lettering identifying the actual crossing number. At the time of the bid of the project, those crossing numbers hadn't been established and were not available from BNSF. It's a relatively small change order at $1,855.51. Change order 24 is for a modified BNSF water meter service. This replaces an existing 8-inch water service to the BNSF main yard. With this, the existing one was not up to current code, and when it's modified and impacted, then we have to bring it up to current city standards. With that, it adds a variety of valving, backflow preventer. There's a heated enclosure based on the size of the actual meter itself and related improvements. The big cost driver on this one is really the electrical related work on it. The total proposed change order amount on this one is $142,321.41. Change orders 25 and 26 are certainly the largest ones here tonight. As we start that, I'd like to group these together a little bit and talk to you guys about SEW walls. So those are the structural earth walls we saw on the second picture of the slides. The issue related with this is the constructability of a contractor-designed, pre-approved proprietary structural earth wall. There's a lot going on with that. And these issues are specifically at the stairwells. And it's related to the proximity of outer walls to inner walls. It deals with some relatively complicated structural engineering, but based on the height of the wall, we had to make some modifications. The two walls were redesigned to allow the pre-approved proprietary SEW walls to be more compatible with each other. Because of this, there was a delay in the manufacturing process. Those panels were fabricated up in Canada, actually, and brought down here to the United States. Because of that delay in the manufacturing and the change that happened to the actual design of the walls, there was a notable impact that happened to the critical path on the project, making these walls critical. This basically turned into a very complicated contractual issue. Unfortunately, this was during the middle of the pandemic, which exacerbated some of the supply chain issues related with obtaining these panels being fabricated and brought to site. So there's a lot going on with that, but backing up to just change order 25, this particular one relates to time impacts associated with this. There's a complex schedule analysis that was performed on this project, both by the contractor and also by WSP, who is the representative for the city of Pasco on the construction project. With that, they've looked at each other's schedules, and there's 119 total contract days that were impacted as part of this. So there'd be 119 days added to the already 400 days of the contractor's schedule. Of those, 67 of those days are deemed compensable, which essentially means that the contractor is able to charge what is an extended overhead. So it's their cost of operating their company for a period of time. The total proposed change order amount associated with that time is $997,699.01. Change order 26 basically addresses the actual impacts associated with constructing those walls. Due to these changes with the proximity of the walls and some geometry that happened with it, it changes how the contractor had to approach the actual construction. This also includes some additional material that was required that's being paid for at the existing bid unit price. The total proposed change order amount is $566,769. Finally, change order 27 is what we're calling phase 1A traffic control. It compensates for necessary traffic control modifications that we don't believe were adequately identified in the plans for the contractor. Essentially, it includes additional barrier, some additional signage for the contractor while they are moving traffic from current configuration into eventually putting people onto the bridge. So there's a series of different traffic control that has to be implemented for traffic to eventually end up on the bridge, and necessary tie-ins and things like that happen. So the original budget on the project is $22,344,999.88. To date, there's been about $1.9 million of approved change orders. Today, the request is for an additional $1.77 million of change orders to address these items. That brings the projected contract total to just over $26 million. So for the construction contract specifically, the request is $1.77 million. In addition to that, there's consultant costs associated with the overall project. JUB Engineers for construction support services. We're requesting that council approve an additional contract for them, contract supplement for them as well. As the designer of the project, they're what's called the engineer of record, and there's certain things that the engineer of record has to be the one to look at on a project. If you can imagine, somebody else probably doesn't want to come in and approve structural design that somebody else did that they don't know anything about. So this would be supplement number 5 to the overall JUB contract. That extends back to design services for the original contract. The current proposed contract supplement is about $223,000, and that would bring the overall contract amount for JUB to about $2.3 million, including supplement 5. And again, that does include original design, some design services as well for the project. Second area is WSP, who is the construction management firm representing the city on site day to day for the project. They provide inspection services and represent the city daily. They've got on-site inspectors actually coordinating material testing and checking out various things on the project, essentially the city's boots on the ground. This would provide essentially an additional 1 year of services on the project. There'd be supplement 2 to the contract. The first one was a relatively small one for about $40,000 for some specific services that had to be performed. It would take the overall contract amount to about $2.8 million. It should be noted that if you prorate them out per day on the project, the proposed supplement is very similar on a per day cost to what they currently are under contract for. So the additional allocation for consultant services is requested at $1.13 million. Any questions, council?
Thank you for your presentation. We do have several questions. First on the list, I have Councilman Campos, followed by Councilman Serrano.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. Quick question. So you talked about the day we broke ground, but how long was the planning phase? I know that we started planning this prior to COVID. We talked about supply chain management. When did initial planning on this project take place?
I mean, specifically related to the SEW walls, or are we talking planning for like
Planning for construction of the actual project.
original construction planning on this was?
Let me back up a little bit. We could look at this at several different starts on this project. This project has been in the making for about 20 years initially. And as most of you know, this has been a project that has gone through several iterations relative to different ways of crossing the rail yard and coming back into downtown, either with a couplet type scenario or not. And so this last project, the one that's being constructed, was started in, I would say, late 2017, early 2019, when the contract with JUB was signed for this particular phase of the project. And I say phase because this is the design for the bridge that's being built. There were other designs done for bridges that were not built.
Okay, that helps. So we'll just ballpark and say 2017 when we kind of started looking at this. How much more dirt work, excavation, et cetera, do we have planned? You mentioned potentially doing backfill on Lewis Street overpass in Q1 of 2025. Is that included in this current budget?
That is not included in this current budget.
Are you anticipating coming back with another budget amendment, or is it a separate item altogether, a separate bid, separate contract?
Will be an amendment to this contract. Our anticipation is that we have a bid item for some demolition of or some work related to the elimination of the underpass. And then the Burlington Northern agreement that we signed required us to remove the underpass to within 6 feet of the existing ground above it, which was a last minute add to the agreement.
Right.
And we did not know what the cost of that would be. And so we have now received the cost of that. But I am happy to say that staff has been working with our funding agencies, and we appear to have been able to find an opportunity to help get that additional work associated with the BNSF requirement potentially covered by an additional increase in grant money.
Okay.
But nothing official has been decided yet.
Okay. So just to summarize then, what I heard is we do anticipate and plan for an additional change, but that was part of our plan to begin with. There's a late minute add for some of that stuff, but to date, we don't anticipate any additional excavation on what our current phase is for our current estimation. Does that sound correct?
If I understand the question, most of the excavation is done. There is work along Lewis Street. We don't anticipate there being any big excavation issues. So we don't expect there to be a whole lot more of this.
Okay. So I'm getting, these are kind of tough, and I know you guys typically, I kind of sit back and a lot of my questions get answered in things, but we've seen a lot of change orders now, and as a planner in my day job, change infuriates me. And planning to make change can typically lead to additional overruns, and I trust our public works department. You know, I understand the logic of their plan, but I've got to voice some trepidation here. When we do these things, I want to kind of know what our process is. Are we doing ground scans? Is that part of our process to make sure that we're identifying any potential obstructions, et cetera? Or are we just digging and uncovering things?
Yes, if I understand your question, there is a portion of the project that does require additional road work along the existing Lewis Street. And we have identified areas within there where there are basements underneath the sidewalks. And we did do some ground penetrating radar studies of the remainder of the sidewalks through downtown to determine if there were any others. And it turns out that there are not as many as we anticipated. So the ones that we found were kind of the worst area of town for that situation to occur.
Okay, all right, that makes me feel more comfortable. I just, again, it just from a planning standpoint, you know, it's never, I wouldn't say never, it's frowned upon to plan to make more changes, to plan on changes. You want to try to encompass what you can. And it sounds like we're making some decent assumptions moving forward. This is a pretty big budget item, and this is why it's getting a little bit more scrutiny from me than you typically see me look at things, because the last few that have come up, these make sense. I would say, change order number 23, I could argue that you probably could have identified that early in some of your planning phases, and it could have maybe been identified early on. But I understand that the rest of these, for the most part, these are kind of last minute additions. I understand your supply chain issues in 25 and 26. So I won't get too more than that, but I just am genuinely curious on what we're going to do and trying to do, hopefully, to mitigate and account for additional change orders in the future, because I'd like to see those come together.
I mean, that's something that our team is regularly looking at as well. As more of these items come up, there's more foresight and more attention to specific areas to mitigate risk as it presents itself. So, thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Councilman Serrano.
Thank you. Obviously, the large sum is the SEW redesign delay, and I heard twice the word proprietary. Two questions about that. One is, was that proprietary design something part of what led this to an attractive bid in the early phase?
Yeah, so with SEW walls, there's about 6 major manufacturers that build these on the West Coast. And so with that, the Washington State Department of Transportation, who kind of leads the charge on developing the specifications for these, sets up certain types of contracts with these folks to develop the best cost for cities. There's walls that you can design that are not proprietary, that are standalone designed walls. Typically there's a much higher cost associated with those. So yes, ultimately we settled on choosing these proprietary walls in effort of mitigating cost on the project.
Okay. And so unfortunately, it sounds like that didn't play out here. I guess the second part of that question is, did the proprietary nature, is that like where we can point the finger in the delay? Or was it more of, it was COVID, manufacturing was bad, all of the above? Or is it, we picked the product, we thought we'd see cost savings, but then it ended up biting us? And, obviously this is all hindsight, and, you're getting a lawyer asking an engineer question, so you got to understand that I'm not coming at you, but I just want to understand what our process is.
So if I understand the question right, essentially, did we think we were approaching this simply for cost savings? We thought we were approaching this to give the contractor an option of multiple different systems, which we thought would work appropriately for the applications that we were having them do. We ran into some complexities with the specific system that was chosen by the contractor. And because of those design complexities, that's been the resulting issue with this.
Okay. No, that's fair. I know there's a lot more we could dig into.
Talk all day on it, unfortunately.
And I think as long, part of our job is to ferret out what the public needs to hear, right? As they hear a 12% overrun in one change order. I don't know exactly what our contingency was and how much. I'm assuming we're beyond that. That's information that's helpful to the public so that they know that we're not just accepting this as, okay, this is good. I like Mr. Campos, I have full confidence in our staff that we're not just accepting it, but again, for the transparency, I think it's important to have these conversations. I see Mr. Worley, your light's on.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, these projects can be complicated. We did have a contingency built into the project. We do that on every project. The first amount of change orders, the contingencies were used for those. So the ones leading up to the ones that we're talking about tonight. So these ones go beyond. It's anybody's estimate as to how much of a contingency to put in a project. We probably should have anticipated maybe a little more contingency on this one, considering its location in a downtown area over areas that have been demolished in the past, those kinds of things. And as far as the proprietary structural earth walls, it's not an uncommon type of wall system that gets used. Like Michael said, there's many different manufacturers that can build walls for this particular application. I think in our particular case, the addition of the stairs that were added to this particular project added a level of complication to those proprietary walls that wasn't anticipated. And so we're going to continue to look into it. We're going to continue to find ways of either saving money or finding additional funding to help put this project back to whole again. And so you've got our commitment on that. We also are looking at potential projects that we might just have planned previously that will get delayed a little bit because we need to use the funding for those planned projects to cover this project. And so we'll continue to work on it and make this project as whole as we can.
Thank you. And then I guess the one other kind of wrinkle in this has been the BNSF issues, which, you know, we've kind of covered throughout the various meetings, throughout the various change orders, you know, and, you know, I guess life's good as a railroad to a degree. I'll leave it at that without, you know, throwing too much under.
And Roach.
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't have a question. I just have a comment. And Director Worley, I think it's to what you just made acknowledgement of is that I think for me as a council member, this item, as exciting as the overall Lewis Street overpass is, and it is necessary, needed, being one of the individuals who's responsible for the overall budget and also transparency to the public, this is one that gives me heartburn because of the number of proposed change orders, and the total quantity of what's being proposed changed. And so what you stated, I think, hits the nail on the head, which is oversight and internal controls of how do we better, as you stated, mitigate the risk, and you had just identified some of them. And so hopefully going forward with big projects like this, that's happening, because I think that's what's just kind of stuck here for me. So thank you for explaining that.
Any other comments? If we can go back to, just a quick question, but if we can go back to change order number 23 regarding the signage, did you state, or I'm not exactly sure how I heard this, did you state that this was something that was not anticipated in regards to the signage or the amount of signage that was going to be needed?
The signage was anticipated, but what to put on the signage was not established for the crossing at the time of the project. So there was some work that had to happen with BNSF to develop every bridge that a train goes under. There's a crossing number on a 4-foot long sign that's, you know, standard 5-inch letters, things like that on there, just identifying the actual crossing number. And so that's what this is. It was something that was planned on in the anticipation at bid time, was knowing that it was a relatively small item, that we would address it by change order because the information wasn't there, and holding up the contract for a period of time wasn't worth that weight.
Okay, thank you. And it's not a huge amount, but I was just trying to figure out, you know, something so small as signage and the requirements. But thank you for the explanation. And I think, you know, along with the comments from fellow council members, this overall number, it looks scary, honestly. Realizing though that this is a project that has been planned for many, many years. It's something that is absolutely needed. But I guess it's just digesting that final number that is causing the heartburn, as mentioned. Do we have any other comments from council members? Well, Mr. Ullman, thank you for the presentation. Director Worley, thank you for the clarification. With no further comment, I'm assuming we're going to see this in the next regular meeting.
That's correct.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for your time, council.
With that, we will go on to next item on the agenda, resolution 2024 Community Development Block Grant Annual Work Plan and Allocations. Director Gonzalez.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. The city of Pasco is an entitlement community which receives funding from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development on an annual basis to provide funding associated with the city's Community Development Block Grant Program. And here this evening, I'd like to introduce Kristen Webb, our Community Development Block Grant Administrator, who is here tonight to provide a summary to council along with recommendations for the 2024 funding allocations.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. As we commence tonight's presentation, I wish to outline the foundational purpose of the Community Development Block Grant Program. This vital program distributes annual grants to states, cities, and counties on a formula basis. Its core objectives is to foster the development of sustained urban communities by ensuring the availability of decent housing, maintain a suitable living environment, and enhance economic opportunities, primarily for individuals and families of low to moderate income. An overview of the Community Development Block Grant CDBG program administered by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The CDBG program is a vital federal resource that offers financial assistance to address a variety of community development needs. In the realm of housing rehabilitation, the CDBG program has facilitated improvements that ensure safe, affordable, and quality housing within our community. Over the past 3 years, we have successfully assisted 15 applicants, distributing a total of $668,000 to support these essential housing projects. Furthermore, the CDBG funds have been instrumental in enhancing our public service activities. In the last 4 years, this grant has benefited 24 applicants with allocations amounting to $324,000. This funding has been pivotal in fostering community services that directly benefit our residents, particularly those of low and moderate incomes. Economic opportunities has also sustained support through the CDBG program. In the past 4 years, we've aided 7 applicants with a generous total of $1.2 million being dispersed to spur economic growth and provide sustainable economic opportunities. I would also like to note that since 2019, a portion of our CDBG funds has been allocated towards the Section 108 debt payment with a substantial payment of $805,000 to date. This strategic allocation underscores our commitment to produce fiscal management and long-term economic planning. In summary, the CDBG program continues to be a cornerstone for community development, reflecting our ongoing commitment to improving the lives of Pasco residents. We look forward to sustaining these efforts with the council's support. This year, our staff developed a criteria that aligned with council goals, the Tri-Cities Home Consortium Consolidated Plan, as well as the feasibility of partial funding for projects. Additionally, these criteria are in harmony with the overarching mission of the Community Development Block Grant, as established by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Applicants were meticulously scored based on the extent to which their proposed projects satisfied these established criteria. Staff presented to the Planning Commission on 3 separate occasions from July to October, and the Planning Commission has formally recommended this annual work plan as outlined in the proposed resolution. This recommendation advocates for a hybrid funding approach wherein 90% of the project's allocation of funding is designated by city projects. Concurrently, the remaining 10% is earmarked for initiatives not directly administered by the city. The distribution model is designed to optimize the impact of funding across both city-led and community-driven projects. This is the end of the presentation, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Webb, for the presentation. Do we have any questions or comments from council members? Councilwoman Roach.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quick question, the total overall looks like a diminishing amount than previous years. Is that accurate?
It is. So over the past several years, the amount that gets allocated to each city has been decreasing based on what Congress has approved.
Thank you.
Looks like no further questions or comments, but thank you again for the presentation. Thank you for the question, Councilwoman Roach. And we do have a possibility of more funding, correct?
Yeah, if, once we find out what Congress has actually allocated, it could increase or decrease.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the presentation again, Ms. Webb. Thank you, Director Gonzalez. No further comments. And you have a comment? No? Okay. And does your presentation continue?
This is for the next item, Mayor.
All right, so we're ready for the next item, which is the Resolution 2024 Home Annual Work Plan and Allocations. And again, Director Gonzalez.
Yes, and I'll pass the microphone on to CDBG Administrator Kristen Webb.
Thank you.
I'm here tonight to provide an insightful update on the allocation and impact of funds received from the Department of Housing and Urban Development under the HOME program. These funds are essential to our city's continued growth and directly contribute to the welfare of our citizens through various assistance programs. In 1996, PASCO formed a home consortium agreement with Kennewick and Richland, thereby qualifying for federal home funds. Under this agreement, after accounting for a 10% administrative set-aside for the lead agency, which is Richland, and a 15% set-aside for community housing development organization activities, each member receives an equal portion of the entitlement. This program has newly incorporated an emergency housing repair assistance initiative utilizing home funds to aid eligible homeowners. While this is a recent addition to our suite of services, we are currently in the process of completing assistance for our first applicant, marking the beginning of what we anticipate will be a beneficial activity for the community. Regarding down payment assistance, over the past 5 years, we have provided aid to 18 applicants with a total disbursement of $160,000. This assistance has been instrumental in making home ownership more accessible to qualifying residents, thereby fostering community stability and economic diversity. In terms of rental assistance, another critical component of our housing strategy, we have supported 86 families in the previous 5 years. This program has allocated a significant sum of $526,000 to ensure that our community's housing needs are met, particularly for those who face the greatest hurdles in securing stable housing. These programs exemplify our commitment to the residents of Pasco, addressing urgent housing needs, facilitating home ownership, and providing rental supports to families in need. As we continue these programs, we seek to ensure that our community's growth is inclusive and that housing assistance is available to those who require it most. Pasco's estimated share of the entitlement, including program income for 2024, is $279,000. For the budget, we have allocated $100,000 to the owner-occupied rehabilitation program, which will facilitate the upgrade of homes to meet current code standards. We expect to complete 2 rehabilitation projects with this funding. Additionally, we have earmarked $10,000 for down payment assistance, projecting to assist one purchase due to HUD's established purchase limit for Pasco at the purchase price of $347,000. Furthermore, $159,000 has been designated for tenant-based rental assistance, with the consortium engaging Community Action Connection to manage this program across the 3 cities. Finally, $10,000 is set aside for administrative costs incurred by Pasco staff in overseeing these programs. I appreciate the council's support for these vital programs and look forward to our ongoing collaboration to serve the best interests of our city. That is the end of the presentation.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions, Councilwoman Roach?
Thank you. I saw in the CDBG grant allocations that their CHIP is listed there as well as it is listed in home. Can you please explain that?
Yeah, so with home funds, the only way that you can use those funds is if somebody comes in and wants to have, like, say, an HVAC unit put on their house. we have to go into that home and find and bring their house up to current code standards. So if their windows need replaced, if their roof needs replaced, if the doors need to replace, if their front steps, anything that has to be brought up to current code standards, we have to bring that house up to those standards. So with the home funds, because there's so many requirements, that's why we only allocated a little bit amount. With the CHIP though, if you came to me and said, I need a new HVAC, I could go to your house, do an inspection, and if that's really the only major thing that needs to be fixed, that's all I would fix.
Okay, so it's just that grant allocations have less restrictions on it with the home versus the,
With the home, they have more
CDBG.
restrictions, yes.
The-
Yeah,
okay, with home, there's more than
Yes.
CDBG.
correct.
Got it, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Just a quick comment. I noticed that for, down payment assistance, in the past 5 years, the amount seems to be lower than the rental assistance amount. And we were just talking about our legislative priorities, how important it is to have homes more accessible, prices of homes to be more accessible for the working class. I would like to see that number inverted and helping people get into stable, permanent housing. And I'm assuming it'll happen here soon.
Yes, Mayor, and I think Tan's a little bit about the number decreasing. Quite frankly, the cost of housing has made the down payment assistance program a little bit less useful than it has in previous years, just due to the cost of housing. So,
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Seeing none, again, thank you, Ms. Webb, for the presentation. Director Gonzalez, thank you for that clarification. And seeing no further comments on these issues, we will move on with our agenda to the next item on the agenda. Miscellaneous council discussion. Do we have anyone, City Manager Lincoln, take it away.
Council. One item that'll be brought before you is sort of an annual tradition. They'll be asking to cancel meetings tentatively right now for the end of the year. We would have our last meeting on the 4th of December. That's what we're anticipating bringing forward for you to consider. Also wanted to mention that the National Community Survey is underway. It should hit mailboxes for the statistically significant portion next week. And then, like we did last time, 4 weeks later, there will be an open participation portion where anybody can participate in answering the questions, which I think was useful. We found last time that the percentages and the answers were relatively similar to the statistically significant portion. So we'll keep you posted on how we make progress on that. And then, as always, Director Rice has a fun update for you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to recap our Veterans Day event. It was wonderful. We had some photos to share with the community to review those. So again, we kicked off an agenda. The weather was a little windy, as those are out there will attest, a little chilly, but still a great turnout. You see we have all our service flags raised here on our Veterans Day program. The placement of the wreath and our plaque recognizing the Veterans Memorial. It says, our debt to the heroic men and women, or valiant women in the service of our country can never be repaid. They have earned our undying gratitude. America will never forget their sacrifices. And that was for President Harry S. Truman. And that is dedicated in the plaque behind the wreath there. Changing the flag ceremony. And again, as Councilman Serrano spoke to, the Blackout truck, which has actually participated in the parade event over in West Richland, was able to make its way over to help represent and recognize the veterans we lost that day. And the cemetery folk, Dan Doda in particular, does a great job of preparing the cemetery. So here you can see, even with the sun, the clouds, and the wind, we had a great presentation of flags on our entrance. And of course, a tribute this week, we've had City Hall lit and the green lighting to represent the lost veterans. And that's what I have for you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from anyone else in regards to anything going on this week? I do have a couple invitations that I want to make. Colin from Pasco Chamber of Commerce has reached out for a turkey giveaway. They're looking for volunteers. I signed up as a volunteer. I am inviting anyone and everyone. If you have time, please come and help distribute turkeys to those families that will be participating. There's also a grand opening celebration on the 16th at Salvation Army. You all have that in your packets. If you're available, come and show up for that celebration on the 16th. But in regards to our beautiful Veterans Day celebration that we had, I received a couple comments from community members about Pasco not having a parade. I did a little bit of research as to when the last one was, many years ago, and so I'll put that seed, plant that seed. I don't know where it's gonna go, but I'll plant that seed to honor our veterans in the community in the city of Pasco that have brought this question about would Pasco do a parade to honor our veterans in Pasco. So there, seed planted. Let me see, I don't believe I have any other questions, comments. Do we have anything else from any council members?
I do, Madam Mayor.
Councilman Campos.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since you mentioned planting the seed, it made me think. I got a comment a few weeks ago, and I apologize for not following up on this. Are we currently doing Yard of the Month?
We have not.
If we've not been, what's holding us back from implementing that?
I'm gonna go off the cuff and guess that we stopped during COVID and just hadn't restarted. So I'll take notes on that and see if it's something we can get restarted next spring with the warming weather and the growing grass. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director. Thank you for that, Councilman Campos. I do believe it's been due to COVID that was stopped. But it would be great to bring that back. We are doing a lot of planting for April. Any other questions or comments? Sounds like there's nothing else. And I have been informed that there is no need, correct? No need for executive session. Chief, thank you. I see the thumbs up. And with that, it is 8:22. This council meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you, everyone that attended. Thank you, everyone online. Have a great evening.